Good morning, good morning. How y'all doing? Happy Monday. Did you survive the time change? You're here on time, so it looks like you did. Good job. Thanks so much for being here today. My name is Karen Rugley. I'm the Director for Mobilization in the Center for Student Action. Wow. Thanks, friends. Today is Faith in Action Chapel. We are excited today to talk to you a little bit about how your peers, students at this university, are continually putting their faith into action. I promise you, students are doing it every day. They're doing it here in the city of Azusa, they're doing it here in the United States, and they're doing it all around the world. You have students right now who are studying abroad. Your peers are in places like South Africa and Ecuador, serving God through their studies and through the work of their hands. You have students who are daily going into this community to serve alongside different people in the city of Azusa. So your peers are serving every day. At this institution, service is one of the four cornerstones, right? All students, regardless of where you are or what you get to do, you get the chance to participate in service. Not have to, that's a reframe for you. Not have to do service, you get the chance to do service. You get the chance to be used by God as his hands and feet to come alongside the work that he is doing everywhere. You are lucky that we have this service credit requirement, I promise you. So today, you're going to get the chance to hear from a few of those students who are doing different things. Some of them have studied away. Some of them have been to Mexico with Mexico Outreach multiple times. Some of them are even considering our His Years program, which sends students after graduation to go serve least and unreached populations for the next 2 years. So I want to talk to you a little bit before we jump in about why it's important to put our faith in action. This year, our university has gone through some different restructuring, and our office in the Center for Student Action is now part of spiritual life on this campus because we value what's happening in your faith in both word and deed. And so I want to read to you from James. It says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if a man or woman claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him or her? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to him, 'Go, I wish you well, keep warm and be well fed,' but does nothing about his physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead." Yeah, that'll preach, right? We want you at this institution to know that we value what happens here in chapel, what happens in your classes through your faith integration. But in the same breath, we value you getting outside of this APU bubble and getting the chance to put that faith that is being so formed in your brain and in your heart and in your spirit. We want you to get the chance to put that into action. So would you join me in welcoming some of your peers to talk about that today? Hey friends, how you doing?
Good.
Good. Before we jump in, I would love for you guys to each take a turn introducing yourself and maybe give us a little history of what you have done for service since you've been a college student at APU.
Hi everyone, I'm Sophia. I started serving through the CSA my freshman year when I started going to the San Dimas Retirement Center. And then from there, I went to Mexico Outreach twice. I did a prayer team and women's prison. And then I started working at the CSA last year, and I am the SMC for Community Meal and San Dimas Retirement Center. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name's Seth. My freshman year, thanks. My freshman year, I was involved with Mexico Outreach. I was on Team Bethesda, which was an orphanage team. My sophomore year, I was part of the Uganda action team. This past May for my junior year, I was one of the leaders for the Thailand action team, and then also in last semester of junior year, I started working in the local engagement department.
Hey guys, I'm Taylor, and I have been, I transferred in spring of 18 and got to go to Mexico for the spring break trip, and also went on one of the weekend trips that first semester. And then after that, I started volunteering with CSA as a lead volunteer and got to lead 6 teams last year down into Mexico. And this year, I get to work doing marketing for CSA.
Thank you. So I think sometimes we have these hard understandings of like, what do I do with these big things like putting my faith into action? What does that actually mean? And so I'd love for you guys to maybe even tell us, what does it mean for you to practically put your faith into action? Maybe in the service that you do in your everyday life, how is it that you are taking your faith, the stuff that you're learning in chapel, in the classroom, how do you actually put that into action?
I've been thinking about this a lot, especially since being at APU, because it's a common conversation. And something that we talked about during training for work this year was that we have to first dwell with Jesus, and then we can go out and be like him and do the things that he did. And so that's been an emphasis for me these last this year especially, but I've seen it, that I need to dwell with Jesus in my time in his word and in prayer, and then, in my everyday life, it tends to just overflow from that spring of life, But faith in action looks like just being open and having eyes open for ways that we can do what we're reading and do what we're praying.
I think for me, I'd ask certain type of questions. So what is it maybe that I'm passionate about? Is this an area of need in the world? And is this also something that the Bible calls me to do as well? And if it's a yes to all of these, then that would be a good enough reasons to go out and pursue different ways to pursue in this service, and trying to figure out how much time am I devoting in my life towards service.
Something that I love about the Lord is that he's available to us and that he's always with us. So for me, I think putting my faith into action in a very practical way is just being there for others and being with others. So even if you're not set up to have a consistent weekly service, just being aware of things that your roommates need or your coworkers, and just being available to them if there's any way that you can help.
So I love that idea, because I think sometimes we have these ideas that service has to happen when we're going out from somewhere, but the reality is that it's all about how we approach our life with an attitude of service. That being said, you guys each have participated in so many different service opportunities, like I said, locally, nationally, and internationally. What's drawn you to those service opportunities, and what role has some of those things played in your life?
Honestly, what draws me to service opportunities is it sounds fun. So I read the descriptions, and it'll say, play games with people at a retirement center. And I'm like, well, I'm great at Jeopardy, and I love my grandparents, so I can do that. It's mainly based around, I really want to hang out with these individuals, or I want to hear their stories. So that's what draws me to service. And because of that, the role it's played in my life is I've built these incredible relationships with people at a retirement center, in community meal, out of prison, and they've all they share their wisdom and their stories, and it's added a good perspective on my life.
I think for me, what draws me to service is the engagement aspect. I like spending time with new and different people that I've never met before. I'm from Iowa, and there's not a ton of diversity over there, which is totally fine, but I get to experience here in LA and with different service opportunities, learning more about new cultures and different matters that reside within them. And then also, it's just a way to get integrated with the world and know what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I think just echoing what they said, just getting to interact with people I normally wouldn't see, get to build relationships with people that I serve alongside and that we get to partner with to serve, and yeah, just those relationships.
Seth, you pointed to something in your response, just talking about the diversity of God, right? Seth, I'd love to hear, what are some of the big God moments that you've had during service? What has that looked like for you? What have you learned about God and that diversity? And maybe, is there anything that you've learned about yourself?
I think in terms of like what I've learned about God is just that in terms of all the service events I've done, that I was never like the first one to ever do it, and that there's a long history of people who have done it before me, and then whether that be like maybe there's full-time people who are working in that, and so they'll be continuing to do that service for a long time afterwards when I'm gone, or there'll be still a lot of volunteers that'll be participating in this service who have vocalized, oh, I can't wait to do this again next year or the next time it happens. And for me, like I think incorporating all of that speaks into like the everlasting aspect of God, and that like he was here before I ever came into this particular service, and then he'll continue to be there after I leave. And then in terms of like from what I've learned about myself is Karen at the beginning asked us student leaders to like pick our values. She gave us a sheet that had like 50 values on it, and then she told us to pick 2, which is like really hard to do. But it was really cool to find out what are my values when it comes to service, and then reflecting on that and how I've really incorporated and oriented myself in doing service to those values. And then it provides a good framework of how I'll continue to go out and do service with in mind of knowing what my values are.
Sophia, Taylor, anything to add to that? What have you learned about God, and maybe what have you learned about yourself?
I think going back to the values exercise that we did, that was very impactful for me also, because I tend to be kind of a squirrel and just take whatever opportunity comes at me, and then tend to do them halfway because I am involved in too much, but I don't want to miss out on anything. And so the really narrowing down what my values are, which was authenticity and stewardship, and just allowing that to like, okay, how do I steward this well, but also how am I authentic to the gifts and the flightiness, I guess, that I tend to have, and embrace and cherish that. So in service, I think it's helped me kind of narrow that down and see ways that I can apply those gifts, and yeah.
I think one of the things that I've learned about God is how he uses everyone, and he doesn't miss anything. And some of the people I hang out with at the retirement center at community meal, they'll talk about how, they're like, I'm still around, so I must have a purpose here. Like, there's a reason that I'm still in this seat. I'm still here for this moment. And I think like that just gives me so much hope to like see them there and see that they're still like doing the work of the Lord and passionate about it. So it's like given me more of a fire to like see how I can incorporate more of what the Lord's doing in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have this misconception too that service is always really great things, right? And there are some really great things that come from service, but at the same time, when you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, when you're stepping outside of what's familiar to you, you're encountering maybe some challenging things. You're encountering things that you've never experienced before. I'd love to hear, are there any challenges that you have experienced in your service opportunities? Maybe you, Sophia, could explain or unpack some of those challenges, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, so I love getting to know these people, and sometimes with that comes having difficult conversations because they're sharing about their lives and they're sharing about really hard things that they've been through. And when I first started serving, for example, like one resident was sharing how his family had been abused by the church and that they had left afterwards, and him kind of feeling angry at God for that. And like sitting there and listening to it, I was like, I don't know what to say. Do I say like, I'm so sorry, or I don't know? So there's just been a few situations where you make yourself available to people and they open up to you because they relate to you and they want to share their hearts with you. So at first I was like, I don't know how to respond in these situations, but I think what I've learned and what you've helped me understand is a lot of times it's not about having the right things to say, but it's just about being there and being with them because they really just want to share their hearts.
Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else?
Okay. This past May, when I was in Thailand, our main focus there was interacting with women and children who are involved in the sex industry or have been trafficked, and so a lot of that was being exposed to secondary trauma. And for me, I naturally wanted to get emotionally attached to those people, and then a challenge in leaving is how am I going to feel with leaving that these people might still be dealing with the issues and struggles that they have in the situation that they're in. But a lot of it was just if there's a time of worry or if there's a time where I feel like these people are struggling, to just be able to give that to God and just that trust that He'll be able to provide comfort for these people and that He's done already a lot of things within the country of Thailand, in that He's motivated and created a lot of passion within the people that are currently there working against those different issues. And so it was one of those areas where if I'm struggling or if I'm having an area of worry, where do I give that?
I got to make a really good friend at one of the sites that we served at regularly in Mexico, and he lived in the mental health home that we serve with, and we just gotten to be good friends. And so I returned there with a team and found out that he was super sick. He looked like he was dying. I thought he was gonna die any second. And just sitting with him and understanding that he doesn't, his family, his blood family isn't there. His brothers at the mental health site care for him and love him, but they're limited in what they can offer for him. And sitting and holding his hand and watching him vomit, and just it was horrible. And just feeling this sense of helplessness that there was nothing that I could give him that would ease his pain, that would make him feel better, that would remove him from the situation that he was in. And it was just this deep realization that the best and most beautiful and most beneficial thing that we can offer people is Christ and His peace. And He's offering it to them, but as bearers of His image and His Spirit, we can bring that with us also. And so I left there just weeping and wept for a week after more. And he ended up surviving and is doing really well even now. But that sense of helplessness and just despair that my friend was suffering and there was nothing to be done about it was just really hard.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think, too, those challenging moments are some of the barriers that almost prevent us from wanting to do service. That feeling of inadequacy that you spoke about, Sophia, feeling well, what do I say in this moment? What do I even do with that? I don't have a box to put that in, and now I'm holding this really important story or this really important person, and I don't know what to do with that. I think that sometimes is a barrier from preventing us to going out and serving. As you think about your time in service, have there been other barriers that have prevented you from wanting to do service, or things that have made it more challenging for you to want to participate?
Yeah, I think just general comfort. Hearing a story like that one of my friend Jorge, just I don't want that kind of burden. I have enough on my plate. And so, yeah, it's a reasonable way of thinking, but as Christians and as a Christian, I have just had to decide, am I living for my own comfort, or am I living to live in the image of Christ? And they often conflict.
I think for me, a lot of barriers that are like common that I hear from volunteers, and then I just even with myself is just like the aspect of time, how much time is going to be devoted into participating in service, whether it be ongoing service or maybe there's a month commitment. And so like a lot of the type of questions that I think people ask is like, I don't know how I would ever make time for this in participating in service, but for me, a lot of it, after I've like said yes, maybe being like disregarding how much time it takes that is going to go into it, now I'm in a further place than I was, because like now how do I deal with the situation of now I have to make time for it, and so it's challenging me to be more adaptable and flexible to like what my schedule is and being able to just be more time manageable. But now I'm just like in a better place of, instead of asking, oh, would I ever make time for this, is now how do I make time for this?
Yeah, I have to agree. A lot of times it comes down to just, this hour would be really nice to work on homework tonight, but I'm going to go serve instead. But at the end of the day, usually that hour that I spent serving like was such a fun and restful time, and like recharges me to go back and do work. But another barrier would be just thinking, oh, this isn't really my thing. Like for me, I'm not really medical. I don't do good with like blood or injuries or things like that. But that doesn't mean I can't be on Team Luke, in Mexico, and doesn't mean I can't learn from it either. So take risks, get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because here at this institution, you're learning a major, right, to hopefully eventually get a job in that major, to really understand who has God called you to be. And so service can often be a really great time to explore what would it look like to actually do this as a job. For liberal studies students, to go and tutor at the neighborhood homework house here in Azusa and think about, okay, how am I helping these students understand maybe outside of the classroom the things that they're learning in the classroom? Or for medical students, it's for pre-med students to go on something like Team Luke and say, okay, how do I take vitals? How do I do all of these things? So in the CSA, we're really trying to give you the chance to vocationally practice outside the classroom what you're learning in the classroom. I'd love to hear if the three of you have any idea on how service has helped you understand your own vocation or your own calling, maybe the bigger pieces of who Sophia is. How did you learn that through service? Hey, you just passed the mic. I said Sophia.
Well, I studied business management, so going to the retirement center and community meal I think what I've learned about myself is how much I love connecting with others and being involved in the community. It hasn't inspired me necessarily to work at a retirement center, but I could see myself definitely if I own a business someday or whatever I end up doing, kind of doing what the CSA does and connecting people with local service opportunities. Yeah.
You can give it back after. I just need time to think.
I think just having explored a lot of different, I came to college late, and so I explored a lot of career things before I came, and then have always just had a lot of weird hobbies, and so then coming into serving in like a more structured capacity, but still with a lot of diversity of opportunity, it's sharpened me in a lot of ways. I think it's sharpened a lot of my weaknesses. I'm not naturally a good planner. I'm not naturally very administrative, and it has forced me to be that way in organizing teams and just communicating in general with people. Like, that's just kind of hard, especially when there's a language barrier, cultural differences, or whatever. And so in that way, it's definitely sharpened me for going into a professional environment.
So for me, I'm a social work major, and so there's a lot of different populations that you can work with. You can work with homelessness, child welfare, policy, international social work, and so a lot of it is there's this very broad area in which I have no idea in which to go into, but by participating in different service opportunities, I'm getting more engaged and seeing what is it like to put myself in these areas. And so like maybe I've enjoyed it, or to be honest, maybe I didn't enjoy the service, but now I'm able to narrow down like my choices and be farther and progress in where my specific calling is.
As you think about, you have a room full of your peers and another room full on East Campus, what advice would you give them as they're considering service, as they are getting the chance to participate in service at this institution? What advice would you give them? Don't all jump at once.
Do what you love. Find opportunities, read the descriptions, and if something jumps out at you and you think to yourself, I love doing that, or I would want to hang out with these people, even if it takes time and it's not convenient, just do it. And don't treat it like a job. Sometimes I go into service and I think it's like clocking in for an hour, but treat it like an opportunity, because you're going to meet amazing people and you're going to have a great time.
I think for me that there's just like a multitude of possibilities that can go with in saying yes to service. I like using the reference of like the Matrix. It's like red pill, blue pill. If you say no to service, like then everything in your life will stay the same way how it is. But by saying yes, there's a possibility that many different things can happen. So you learn more about like maybe what you're passionate about, what are your strengths, what are areas of growth that you're in need of, what ways do you do leadership. And so looking forward to all these different possibilities, that means that by saying yes, you're instilling like hope within you, and that like there is this possibility for it is. I don't know how likely it is that it's going to happen for you, or that it's a promise that it will, but looking towards and being hopeful for those possibilities is always good.
Yeah, second what these guys have said. Also another facet of that is Jesus commands us to serve. And we don't do it for a pat on the back. I read a Bob Goff quote this morning that says, you don't get accolades for loving people who are difficult to love. You just do what Jesus did. You just get a better insight into who he was. And so if you are looking, or even if you want to know Jesus better, serve.
Would you join me in thanking your peers for their wise wisdom? If any of this has sparked your interest, we want you to know that while, yes, we are nearing the end of the semester, it's not too late for you to do service. We still have lots of chances for you to participate in service through the CSA. So after chapel, directly after chapel, out here on Kresge Plaza and on Cougar Walk, there's a few tables. Again, if something has sparked your interest, if there's something that you have read that you're like, yeah, I really want to explore that, if there's a way that you want to consider taking what you're learning in the classroom outside of the classroom, come and stop by and see us. We would love to get you connected to a service opportunity that maybe you're going to discover more about who you are and who God has called you to be. Let me pray, and then we will get you out of here. Jesus, we thank you so much that you invite us, broken people, to participate in the consistent and constant renewal of your kingdom through service. God, we see that in Scripture, you came, Jesus, to serve. You came to serve. And if we are created in your image, God, we get the chance to participate in service too. From the very beginning, you served us by creating this beautiful world around us, God. And now we get to continue redeeming and restoring and reconciling it all back to you. Jesus, would you inspire us? Would you give us wisdom and knowledge in how you have uniquely called each and every one of us, so that no matter what it is that we do for a job outside of APU, or even now, that we would enter that into with an attitude of service, Lord, knowing that in the end of the day, we're pointing people back to you. Thank you, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. Go with God.